You know, it wasn't long ago when the Transformers film franchise had seemingly run out of gas. With the back to back releases of Age of Extinction and The Last Knight, some of the worst blockbusters ever conceived by mankind, it was widely believed that there is no more creativity left to mine in the series. Now, I had grown up loving the cartoon. In fact, the only reason I even started using YouTube in the first place was to watch the original G1 80s animated series. So, in a weird way, you can thank Optimusprime for the Cinema Snoop YouTube channel for even existing. Then the first Michael Bay film came out in 2007, and I was over the moon. The moon of Cybertron, that is. Little 10-year-old Jeff Goodwin was not prepared to see those large-scale robot sequences that he had only watched in cartoon format. And I was far from a critic back then, so of course, I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. But time passed, that small boy grew older and tastes changed. And by the time we got to things like Marky Mark chugging a Bud Light, and an awful character explaining why it was okay for him to date a high schooler, I decided to hang my hat on the Transformers series. Then Bumblebee came out a few years later. It wasn't a perfect film by any means, but it had traded in that god-awful Michael Bay humor for a genuine feeling of heart and humanity, two traits that the previous entries were lacking. It was good enough to actually allow the studio to greenlight a sequel, thus bringing us to Transformers Rise of the Beasts. The movie takes place in the 90s and focuses on two new human protagonists, Noah, played by Anthony Ramos, and Elena, played by Dominique Fishback. The two get caught up in the latest battle waged by the Autobots to stop an ancient evil from destroying the universe. Over the course of the adventure, we are treated with big action set pieces, references to the older cartoon series, and plenty of 90s soundtrack hits. The last time I checked Rotten Tomatoes, Rise of the Beast was sitting at around 54%, which is kinda nuts. Look, this thing is far from Amadeus, but it is by no means as bad as the other entries I mentioned in the beginning of the review. As the title says, this feels like an episode of a Saturday morning cartoon brought to the big screen. It's just as fun as one of them, and is also just as dumb as one. Right off the bat, I can say that Rise of the Beast has the same amount of heart as Bumblebee. The only difference is this one actually has a storyline, so I found myself actually enjoying this one a bit more. I mentioned that the film takes place in the 90s, and the filmmakers take full advantage of that. Aside from the needle drops, there was a lot of care taken in making the vibe feel exactly like the time period. Anthony Ramos gives a lot of humanity to the character of Noah, and he's definitely one of the better human leads in the franchise overall. He even has this little brother character who didn't annoy me. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that bad kid actors are my Achilles heel. But this kid was likable, funny, and added a lot of the movie's heart. I thought the dynamic between these two was the most genuine relationship in the whole story, and I wanted way more of it. I definitely found it more compelling than his dynamic with both Dominique Fishback's character and Pete Davidson's Autobot Mirage. Elena was well fleshed out, and I liked that she wasn't a stereotypical romantic interest for Noah, but it's clear they only had her there to guide the giant robots from one plot point to the next. Pete Davidson's Mirage was exactly how you would expect a Cybertronian robot voiced by Pete Davidson to act like. He didn't annoy me too much, but at a few scenes the film tries to have the friendship between Mirage and Noah feel like the human-robot friendships from the other movies, and it just falls flat. The one character who absolutely owns this movie is Optimus Prime, to no one's surprise. This time around, the Autobot commander actually goes through an arc. He's not the omniscient robo-Jesus who we all know and love. He's bitter, and still learning his way around being a leader. This includes making a few mistakes which cost the team at certain points. It was a much welcome dynamic that added a lot to his character. But all of this wouldn't matter if the action wasn't cool, and it was, for the most part. Each robot had their own distinct look and color, so I could always tell who was fighting who. The addition of the Maximals added a new dynamic to the battle sequences as well. I didn't watch the Beast Wars show growing up, so it was refreshing to see mecha lions, gorillas, and birds join in on the action along with the Porsches and trucks. It's great that they were able to use these animal transformers in the action because they didn't really serve any role in the story. I actually think you could change the film's title and it wouldn't affect things too much. The beasts don't quite rise, as they just show up after the movie's midpoint to drop more exposition. And if I'm being honest, I sort of checked out once the third act started. The characters seemingly invent this random MacGuffin that wasn't mentioned before, and a war breaks out in this bland gray desert landscape. I'd be lying if I said my eyes didn't glaze over. The fight scenes were so cool in the first two acts that I was disappointed they just reverted to the concrete MCU look by the climax. Look, say what you will about the Michael Bay films, and you certainly could say a lot, but the man knew how to do third act battle sequences. I personally think that Transformers 3 is the best action in the whole franchise. But overall, I did have a good deal of fun watching Transformers Rise of the Beast. It certainly continues the franchise down the right direction, and the way the story concludes sets up an interesting possibility for the future. I know that 10-year-old Jeff would absolutely love it, so if you have a kid or younger sibling, I suggest bringing them along to see it. The couple who sat next to me in the theater certainly did, as they brought their children to the screening. All 5 of them, including a baby. But regardless, this movie is a fun summer blockbuster that will entertain you for a good 2 hours. Just don't think about it too hard. I'm going to give Transformers Rise of the Beast a C.